My name is Sam Hall, and this is the RBCL podcast. I'm joined here with my friend and my pastor, Jim Savastio. Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Sam. How about you?
I'm doing great. Glad to be
Good.
here with you.
Yeah, me too.
Well, we wanted to dig in a little bit today about uh, where this church came from and how Pastor Jim came down to be the pastor of the Reformed Baptist Church of Louisville. So, Pastor Jim, do you want to dig into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sam. The history of the Reformed Baptist Church of Louisville goes back to really 1988 and then into the early part of 1989. And there were a group of people in the area that had begun to study certain doctrines, particularly the what are called the doctrines of grace, sometimes called the 5 points of Calvinism, and had studied historic Baptist confessions, particularly the London Baptist Confession of Faith of 1689. Now, if that's new to you, you can Google it. It's on many different websites, including our own RBC Louisville website. In January of 1989, three men drove up to Grand Rapids, Michigan, to petition the elders of a church that was then called the Reformed Baptist Church of Grand Rapids, now called Grace Emmanuel Reformed Baptist Church. And they petitioned them to, if they would help them to plant a confessional Baptist church here in Louisville. And this is Louisville in 1989, 1990. It's a very different theological landscape than it is today. They agreed to do that, and in the spring of 1989, a man named Sam Waldron, who now pastors a church in Owensboro, Kentucky, and heads up Covenant Baptist Theological Seminary, came and he preached a series of messages in the home of one of the original members. They started meeting in the basement of that home. There was a beverage bar. In our own little lore as a church, the beverage bar pulpit is kind of something that's often talked about. And so they began to meet. 10 adults eventually kind of formed the core, or were committed to seeing a church plant here in Louisville. So I was at that time studying at a school in New Jersey called the Trinity Ministerial Academy. And I was petitioned to come as a help and an aid. So this was in 1990, the summer of 1990. There had been 3 or 4 other churches that were helping the church plant, and they would have different preachers come every week. And the leadership thought it would be helpful, it might be stabilizing, and it might even help the work to grow if there was one preacher every week preaching a consecutive series of messages. And so my wife and I came down in July of 1990 for what was meant to be a 3-month ministry. And at the end of that time, the people asked if we would stay, with a view to seeing the church constituted and becoming a full-time pastor. And the church constituted about a year later, September of 1991, with 12 members, the 10 that were already committed, and then my wife and I made numbers 11 and 12.
All these dates are before I was born.
There you go, Sam. I know.
I am interested to know, though, Reformed Baptist, what does that mean, really?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different definitions out there, various articles out there on that subject. But Sam, to me, I guess probably the easiest thing is just break it down into its 2 component parts. What does it mean to be Reformed, and what does it mean to be Baptist? So the Reformed faith is a historic faith. It's a creedal faith, a confessional faith. It's an Orthodox and Protestant faith, but it's also a faith that is rooted in several key components. It has a view, again, a high view of the sovereignty of God and salvation. It has a very high view of the place of the local church. It has a high view of what the grace of God does in salvation. There's a very high view of that salvation is rooted in God's justifying act in the person and work of Christ. It is received by faith, not of works. There are clear law-grace distinctions in the Reformed faith. Matters, things like covenant theology are all a part of that. And so when we say that we're Reformed, we're talking about our own agreement with some other Reformed traditions, even in Reformed confessions. Our Confession of Faith, the London Baptist Confession of 1689, is kind of the granddaughter document of the Westminster Confession, written in the 1640s, and of what was called the Savoy Declaration, which was the British Congregationalist in the 1650s. Our confession was written in 1677, but not published till 1689 because there was of political wranglings and persecution in England. But we hold those things in common. We're also Reformed in my mind in that we are trying to reform or conform our church to anything and everything we see in God's Word. There's a text in the prophet Isaiah that says, to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. And our desire is to be pleasing to God by removing anything that he has not explicitly commanded or doesn't desire, that we're not free to recreate what the church is or what worship is, that we believe God has spoken and we're to submit to that. And then also to add everything. So if there's something missing and we see it in God's Word, our determination is we're going to add that. If we see it in the Bible, if God shines a new light, sheds a new light according to his Word, then we want to conform our life to that. And so to me, and then as I mentioned, we're also Baptist, and that makes us different than our Paedo-Baptist brethren, those who baptize babies in the Presbyterian and other traditions. We believe in the baptism of disciples alone. We believe that the church is made up of converted people, and that it's made up of saints, and that is a part of our understanding of what it means to follow the Lord in this. And obedience is not just following older traditions, but we do believe that the Bible teaches that disciples are to be baptized, and that baptism is to be by immersion, and that it's only to be given to those who are believers. So very quick thumbnail, that's Reformed and Baptist.
Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. And you also, I think, imply that there weren't a whole lot of churches like this back when this church was planted.
Yeah. So go back to the 1980s, 1990s. So this is a seminary town, Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, a prominent seminary in the Southern Baptist Convention, had a wide influence in Louisville. There's a statement that's been used many times: as the seminary goes, so go the churches. And because the seminary had become moderate to liberal, it was producing liberal graduates who were then influencing their churches. And when a man named Al Mohler came, I think it was in 1993, and he kind of turned the seminary around, really kind of a unique thing almost in church history, of seeing something going from that far to the left to being brought into more biblical and confessional roots. And that then produced eventually graduates who took over churches and reformed and revitalized churches, so that Louisville has a lot of men who are good teachers, preachers, giving good theology and good practice. So it's a blessing to live in a town like this.